No one could perceive where the vast body of water went. It seemed to lose itself in the earth, the opposite lip of the fissure into which it disappeared being only 8 feet distant. Creeping with awe to the verge, I peered down into a large rent which had been made from bank to bank of the broad Zambezi, and saw that a stream of 1,000 yards broad leapt down 100 feet, and then became suddenly compressed into a space of 15 or 20 yards. The most wonderful sight I had witnessed in Africa. It was November 1855 when the famous Scottish explorer and missionary David Livingstone stepped out of his canoe onto an island to obtain his first view of what the local people called Mosi-oa-Tunya, the smoke that thunders. Livingstone was so overawed, he was moved to say, "Scenes so lovely must have been gazed upon by angels in their flight," and renamed the falls after his queen. Today we know this natural wonder of the world as the Victoria Falls. The story of that waterfall must begin with a river. In the far interior of south-central Africa, a small, insignificant spring bubbles up between the roots of a tree in northwestern Zambia. Rapidly growing through the addition of the water of many tributary streams, this spring becomes the mighty Zambezi River and embarks on its historic 2,700-kilometer journey to the Indian Ocean. In doing so, it becomes Africa's 4th largest river. The Zambezi, except where interrupted by occasional rapids, is placid and smoothly flowing. It flows first westwards into Angola, then swings south to re-enter Zambia and passes through the flat country of Zambia's western province. This area is covered by a thick mantle of sand, evidence of a past northern extension of the Kalahari Desert. Then, with very little advance warning, the river falls into that vast chasm stretching from side to side of its bed. For some 500 kilometers, what is known as the Middle Zambezi, the river forms the border between Zambia and Zimbabwe, and compressed in places almost to 1/30th of its former width, flows on an angry, tortuous course through a deep rocky gorge which goes through some of the wildest and most unfrequented country in that part of Africa. It then emerges into a more open gorge, now flooded by the waters of Lake Kariba. The federal government of Rhodesia and Nyasaland had embarked on one of the greatest engineering tasks in history. They planned a pure arch dam to rise 128 meters from the riverbed rock to hold back the waters of the Zambezi. This is nearly 35 meters higher than the Victoria Falls themselves, and more than twice the height of the Niagara Falls. In 1958, the signal was given for the Zambezi to be choked on a project costing £123 million in those days. Today, the lake is 280 kilometers long and 40 kilometers wide, and has a shoreline of 1,280 kilometers. It is one of the world's largest man-made lakes. Some idea of the immense extent of the flood area can be gained from the fact that set down in England, Lake Kariba would stretch from London to Manchester, while in Europe it would engulf Paris at one end and Brussels at another. But trouble was imminent. In 1958, above the Victoria Falls, the Zambezi was already 5 meters above the highest level of the previous year's floods. It seemed impossible that such a torrent would happen again. The river continued to rise, and what had been erected of the Kariba Dam wall collapsed. A flood resulted which, it had been calculated, could only happen once in 10,000 years. The river flooded to 70 kilometers across the Barotse Plains. The trust and loyalty amongst the laborers did not falter, and reconstruction went ahead. With the building of the entire dam wall and the consequent flood, the Kariba Gorge had become a far more deathly trap for wildlife. A small band of white rangers and African scouts, led by Rupert Fothergill, were the total strength of the team, whose skill, resource and courage were to carry out the greatest animal rescue operation since the Ark. And so the world-famous Operation Noah began. The rescuers loaded their boats with living cargoes of buck, zebra, honey badgers, baby elephants, and even porcupines and warthogs made frantic and doubly dangerous by terror of the rising tide. The bigger animals swam to safety. Over 5,000 animals were rescued, including 35 different mammal species and 44 black rhino. Kariba was constructed as a hydroelectric undertaking, but the development of tourism and other industries brought about by the existence of the lake has been outstanding. Alongside one of the greatest works engineered by man, the fisherman, the camper, the sun worshipper, the boating enthusiast, the water skier, and the yachtsman can enjoy his leisure in conditions of almost unrivaled scenic beauty. A sunny Zimbabwean Riviera playground for both local and foreign tourists. Evenings are spent soaking in the night sounds of Africa as you watch a magnificent African sunset and listen to the haunting cry of a fish eagle. Below Kariba, the Zambezi is swollen successively by the affluence of the waters of the Kafue and Luangwa rivers. At its junction with the Luangwa River, the Zambezi enters Mozambique. It then enters the Cabora Bassa Lake, which is of a similar size to Lake Kariba, and eventually issues into the Indian Ocean, almost 1,500 kilometers from the Victoria Falls themselves. The tone and mood of the Zambezi River has now been set. We return to the most dramatic sight on the river, the Victoria Falls, which is one of the 7 modern wonders of the world. The falls are 2 kilometers wide and have a maximum height of 103 meters. The whole body of water rolls clear over, quite unbroken. But after a descent of 10 or more feet, the entire mass suddenly becomes like a huge sheet of driven snow. 150 million years ago, great sheets of lava erupted from the bowels of the earth, long before the Zambezi River was flowing, to form a great plate across Central Africa. Erosion and earth movements broke up this plate over millions of years, and the basalt lava cracked. Softer material was deposited into these cracks or fault lines, mostly Kalahari sandstone, which is common in this part of Africa. At the Victoria Falls, the fault lines between the hard basalt lava and the softer Kalahari sandstone form a zigzag pattern, and this feature has made the Victoria Falls unique amongst the world's waterfalls. The river action eroded the softer rock, leaving the lava towers and making it possible to walk almost the entire width along a platform at the height of the lip in front of the main falls. The Zambezi, with its tremendous power and large volume of water, scooped out the soft material from the fissures and formed the first wall. Once the fall was established, a period of stability followed, and then the full force of the river is concentrated at that point. The erosive power increases and starts to cut along the next fault line, starting the process of the next Victoria Falls. This process of retreat back down the river has happened several times. The northern lips of at least 7 gorges, seen clearly from the air today, were once full-scale Victoria Falls, which flourished for a time. At low water, it's actually possible from the air to see the fault line of the next Victoria Falls, cutting back from the Devil's Cataract at about a 30-degree angle. There is a deep cleft in Cataract Island which has already cut back some distance. The process has seen the falls retreat several kilometers from its original position, each new fall taking between 1/4 and 500,000 years to form. No European was within 100 miles of the Victoria Falls until 1851. It was then that the course of the upper Zambezi itself became known to outsiders, and in particular David Livingstone and William Oswell. It's not commonly realized that there are 2 other candidates for the honor of being the first European actually to set eyes upon the Victoria Falls. A Portuguese trader, Silva Antonia Francisco Porto, and an Hungarian, Ladislaus Magyar, also traveled through the area. Thus, whether or not Livingstone and Oswell were the first Europeans to see the upper Zambezi, they were the first to make its presence known to the outside world. In 1855, Livingstone planted a small garden on Livingstone Island, surrounded by a hedge to protect it from hippopotami. "This was," he wrote, "the only instance in which I indulged in this piece of vanity. I've no doubt that this will be the first of all the gardens which may yet be in this young country." The visitors of 1862 are well documented, being John Chapman and Thomas Baines, both of whom published accounts of their travels. Baines found the garden which Livingstone had planted, but it had been trampled by hippo and was completely overgrown. It was on this occasion that Baines executed the fine paintings of the Victoria Falls, which he published in 1863. Copies of these pictures are very much in demand today and can readily be bought in Zimbabwe. The scramble for Africa by the European powers was gathering momentum. The way was open for European settlement on a previously unknown scale. By 1905, only half a century after the arrival of the first European visitor, a busy colonial town was flourishing within sight of the Victoria Falls. The first permanent European settler was a Mr. P.M. Clark, commonly known as Mopane Clark. He was quick to realize the commercial advantages and established himself as a trader, hotel keeper, and forwarding agent on the north bank of the Zambezi, at the point above the rapids where goods were ferried across on a point towed by a small steam launch. The northern end of this crossing was known as the Old Drift. A railway was built from Bulawayo to the Victoria Falls. Cecil John Rhodes, whose name was given to the country of Rhodesia, never saw the falls, but had expressed the wish that the railway should cross the Zambezi just below the Victoria Falls. "I should like to have the spray of the water over the carriages." The original Victoria Falls Hotel was a temporary wood and corrugated iron structure, built primarily to house the workers on the bridge. The intention was that the hotel be demolished once the bridge had been completed, so that no building should remain within sight of the falls. However, this was never carried out. The Grand Victoria Falls Hotel stands today, obviously having a splendid view of the Victoria Falls Bridge spanning the river and linking Zimbabwe with Zambia. Construction of the bridge began in 1904. The gorge was crossed by firing a rocket attached to a string, by which was hauled over a rope and then a steel cable. A boatswain's chair was put into operation, by which the gorge crossing could be made in approximately 10 minutes. The bridge was built out from each side, and the two halves were successfully joined and bolted together in April 1905. In 1907, light trolleys consisting of 2 benches back to back and running on rails were installed between the Victoria Falls Hotel and the falls themselves. They were popular amongst those passengers who were not involved in the occasional derailments. They had a handbrake and were pushed uphill by 4 Africans. An example of the trolley is preserved today in the courtyard of the Victoria Falls Hotel. In the early 1930s and 1940s, there used to be a flying boat service operating from Europe to Africa. The stretch of water above the falls is the longest straight piece of river in Africa. An excellent landing area for a flying boat. In those days, it was quite an adventure. The landing platforms can still be seen up the river today. An entrepreneur is considering reintroducing this service as a luxury trip. There are many moods at the Victoria Falls. There is such a seasonal variation in the flow of water that the falls can produce widely differing impressions on the visitor at various times of the year. The falls have their lowest water level generally in late November or early December, well after the start of the rainy season, which falls in the 5 months between November and March, further upstream. Rainfall averages some 76 centimeters per year. The summer rainy season is also the hottest time of the year, when temperatures can reach 52 degrees Celsius. At this period, the mean flow of water over the falls is less than 20,000 cubic meters per minute. By the time the rainfall upstream has reached the main falls, the peak water level occurs around the month of May. Water passes over the falls at about 30 times its dry season volume. It averages 550,000 cubic meters per minute. Flows of 700,000 cubic meters per minute were recorded in the record flood of March 1958. It's interesting to compare Victoria Falls with Niagara Falls in North America. The Victoria Falls is more than 3 times the size of Niagara in terms of flow of water, as well as being more than twice the height and twice the width. Spray is so dense that the drenched spectator can neither see the bottom of the chasm nor fully appreciate the width of the falls. Everything but the wall of water immediately before him is hidden in a swirling mist of rising spray, which can rise to considerable heights, some of over 500 meters. It can easily be seen from a distance of 30 kilometers. At such times, the only complete view can be obtained from the air. A light aircraft will take you on what is called the Flight of Angels. It is on such a trip that you can appreciate the full panorama of this breathtaking view. To be appreciated and understood in all their moods, the Victoria Falls are to be visited not once, but many times. There are 5 separate falls making up this natural wonder: Devil's Cataract, Main Falls, Horseshoe Falls, Rainbow Falls, and the Eastern Cataract. The lowest is 61 meters in height, and the highest is 108 meters. Starting on the far west, a series of steps leads down into the heart of the gorge. From this so-called chain walk, the visitor first sees the great plunge of the Devil's Cataract. This is a 30-meter wide, 70-meter fall that has eroded the rock 10 meters below the average fall line, and thus carries a large volume of water at all seasons. It is probably here that the next fall line will start to form, as more and more water is directed to this western section. The alternative position for the next fall line is through the cleft which has formed obliquely to the present falls through Cataract Island. Today, a large bronze statue of David Livingstone gazes east along the line of the falls near Devil's Cataract. Many years ago, the real adventurers could get to Cataract Island by canoe. To the east of Cataract Island are the 830-meter wide Main Falls, which carry a substantial volume of water even when the river is at its lowest level. They can best be viewed from the rainforest. This is an experience in itself. Get your swimming costumes or raincoats out for a wet walk with a view so awesome and inspiring, it will entice you back for another shower daily. The path through the tremendous spray is at the same height as the lip of the main falls on the opposite side of the chasm, and therefore offers splendid vantage points for photographs and for marveling at the sheer height of the falls. The eastern boundary of the main falls is marked by Livingston Island. It was from this grassy ledge above the island precipice that the great explorer David Livingstone, having descended the river by canoe, obtained his first view of the falls. An elderly resident at Victoria Falls today tells of a night in 1920 when a large rock fell from the top of the Rainbow Falls, forming what looks like an armchair. When the water level is low, it's possible to actually walk from the Zambian side across the entire width of the falls along the edge to the armchair and have a swim in the rock pool it has formed. On the very eastern end is the 101-meter-high Eastern Cataract. At this end, too, is Danger Point. This is a vantage site offering a magnificent view of the Eastern Cataract, Rainbow Falls, and part of the main falls. Today it is not easy for the visitor to reach Livingston Island, but an impression comparable with that obtained by Livingstone of being perched on the brink of a precipice surrounded by roaring, falling water may be experienced at Danger Point. This rocky promontory is the furthest point on the Zimbabwean side, east, that can be reached through the rainforest. It is situated at the angle of the main falls chasm and the narrow gauge, which directs the water into the second gorge, now spanned by the Victoria Falls Bridge. Tourists can hire bicycles and, armed with passports, can cross to the Zambian side, where it is reputed the best views can be seen. On the Zambian side, a path winds down to a feature known as the boiling pot, into which the water of the Zambezi swirls and fumes before descending to the gorges beyond. It was here that the railroad bridge was built in 1905, deliberately sited so that passengers would feel the spray of the falls on their carriages. The Rainbow Falls can most easily be seen from the Zambian side, from a promontory which corresponds to Danger Point. The narrow knife edge, as it is known, which joins this promontory to the Zambian mainland, is now spanned by a footbridge. Climatically, one would expect the area to support an open, deciduous or semi-deciduous woodland. But as one looks around, it is almost tropical, with an abundance of palm trees. An area called Palm Grove is found on the Zambian side upstream from the railway bridge. It is the easiest descent into the gorge. Lianes, a type of vine, are easily visible in Palm Grove. There used to be a spot where you could swing on a liane as thick as your thigh. The most striking feature of the vegetation in the Victoria Falls area is the vegetable ivory. Apart from the falls and the Zambezi River, there is much to see and do. In the nearby 56,000-hectare Zambezi and Victoria Falls National Park, there is a wide variety of animal and bird life. Tour operators conduct regular game viewing trips. The reserve is known for its large numbers of antelope. Elephant and buffalo can be seen regularly, and lion roam the area. At the Crocodile Ranch, the visitor may see over 2,000 live reptiles, ranging in size from 50 centimeters to 4,5 meters. Take a look at Big Daddy. He's one of the largest crocodiles in captivity. In the midst of the town is the historically accurate Craft Village. Here, the living quarters, grain storage bins and other structures of traditional Zimbabwean village life have been faithfully copied. The building styles, decorations and implements represent the country's major tribes. Be swept up every evening by the pulsating sounds of Africa at colorful traditional dancing shows called the African Spectacular. A beautiful, calm and cool walk may be taken along the bank of the river to the big tree. The tree is a giant baobab, or cream of tartar as it's otherwise known. It is 16 meters in circumference and 20 meters high. It is estimated to be between 1,000 and 1,500 years old and is believed to be the largest of its kind in Zimbabwe. The Victoria Falls is an area of great natural beauty, which is protected and remains virtually unspoilt. No commercialization has been allowed to mar this wonder. A small resort town has grown up near the falls to cater for the visitors' comfort and convenience. 5 quality hotels, almost all within walking distance of the falls, add to the magic of this resort. There is the old-fashioned charm and elegance of the Victoria Falls Hotel, which is reputed to be the grandest old hotel in Africa. Relax and be spoilt with good old colonial hospitality and order some crocodile tail for hors d'oeuvre. For a change in style, there is the modern Makasa Sun Hotel next door. Obtain different views of the Zambezi River and the falls from the rooftop patios. The pool is an ideal oasis on those hot summer days. Modern luxury in the heart of Africa. At night, that travel budget can be flitted away at the casino until the early hours of the morning and gives you a chance to double your money. Other hotels include the motel-style Sprayview, the family hotel of the Zambezi River Lodge, and the exclusive Moorish Rainbow Hotel. Accommodation is also available at the National Park Camp and the town caravan and camping site. For those mixing business with pleasure, conference facilities are available at most hotels. Nightlife at the Victoria Falls begins with a booze cruise, a sundowner cruise famous for the spectacular sunsets one sees while floating up the river. There are a variety of activities that one can undertake while staying at the falls. Game viewing, fishing, swimming, tennis, and for the adventurous, try your luck at ballooning. There is nothing to stop one venturing down the gorge in front of the Victoria Falls Hotel. A steep descent and a short briefing by an oarsman prepares you for the wildest one-day whitewater run you'll ever experience. With the thunderous roar of the main falls just behind your 5-meter inflatable raft, you, the oarsman, and your crew will drift through the gorges, sometimes only 12 meters wide. These are the gorges that create some of the biggest whitewater rapids to be found anywhere in the world. The 22-kilometer run winds between cliffs of stark and savage beauty up to 185 meters high. The gorges are home to several species of birds, including the world's rarest falcon, the taita. After surging through up to 10 swirling sets of rapids, if not the most memorable, this will probably be the most exciting thing you will do. Each inflatable raft is guided by a highly skilled oarsman. Lunch of cold meats and salads is taken on the banks of the river, and ice-cold refreshments await you at the top of the gorge. What better way to see all that the mighty Zambezi has to offer than to ride its waters? If you'd prefer a quieter, more mellow trip, there is always the option of a 5-day or more canoe trip in the waters above the Victoria Falls. Leisurely looks at wildlife on the river's edge and peaceful, warm evenings spent around a campfire with friends taking in all the sounds of the night. There is something compelling about the Victoria Falls, an indefinable magnet that draws the visitor back again and again, soaking in its splendor, admiring its majesty, living its moods. Images of the falls are inextricably linked with Africa, and indeed the Zambezi River is the very essence of the continent. From its source, it penetrates nearly 3,000 kilometers across the heart of the subcontinent. But nowhere does it reveal its magic more than in the cascading waters and towering gorges of the Victoria Falls. This is Africa's masterpiece, a work of nature so magnificent that words cannot encapsulate it, and photographs and films are inadequate to describe it. Standing before the smoke that thunders is a deep emotional experience, a communion with nature. Nature is the master here, not man. He is only privileged to experience, to watch, but not to participate. A higher source than man has shaped this chasm and breathed life into those boiling waters. As the great Zambezi unfolds its mysteries, you may get a glimpse of the very soul of Africa.